Some people lose their way all at once. Others lose it slowly, one quiet evening at a time. Vasily was the second kind. He stood in the middle of his house and stared at the mess like he'd stared at it 1,000 times before. Unwashed dishes, clothes thrown over chairs, dust collecting in corners, an empty bottle on the table like a dead clock that had stopped counting time. Every morning he promised himself the same thing. Today I'll clean. Today I'll fix it. Today I'll start living again. Those promises always came in the morning, when the light made everything look possible. But at night he came home with a bottle of vodka, drank it fast like medicine, and passed out, fully dressed, sometimes without turning off the light. That was his routine. A year, maybe more. Ever since Natasha left him and ran off to the city for a better life. And the worst part? It wasn't even the fact that she left. It was the way she did it. Before the collapse, Vasily met Natasha in a neighboring village at a dance, one of those loud, dusty rural discos where the music was too strong and the lights were too weak, but people still came because there was nothing else. He'd never seen her before, and normally he wasn't the kind of guy who had to chase anyone. Girls didn't leave him alone. He was tall, strong, broad-shouldered, one of those men who looked like he was born to work and survive anything. And he did work. Hard. He was employed at the farm enterprise, what people now called a private agricultural business, even though it was basically the same old collective farm, just owned by one person instead of everyone. Vasily made good money, not because he was lucky, because he was the best. He could drive a tractor, a combine, a truck, anything with an engine. The older men in the village used to shake their heads and say, "Metal obeys Vasily." And there was truth in it. Machines ran better when he touched them, like he could talk to the engine in a language only it understood. He lived alone. The grandmother who raised him died right after he turned 18, almost like she'd waited until she was sure he could stand on his own. Everyone assumed Vasily would go to the city after school, but he didn't. He came back, built a big house, worked like a man possessed. He didn't even look at girls. Not because he didn't want love, because he wanted to be ready. He'd grown up poor. He knew what hunger felt like. He knew what it meant to sleep cold, because firewood cost money and the stove couldn't be fed forever. So he made a decision. First, I build a life. Then I bring a wife into it. Then he saw Natasha, and every plan he ever had got rewritten in one heartbeat. A fast wedding and a comfortable life. Natasha liked him, but she liked something else even more. The exit door. She came from a crowded family, the oldest daughter in a home full of children. That meant she was responsible for everything: cleaning, cooking, babysitting, helping, sacrificing. Marrying Vasily felt like freedom. They had a quick wedding, nothing fancy, but joyful. And once she moved into his house, Natasha started living the way she'd always dreamed. Vasily spoiled her. He bought dresses people in the village didn't even recognize, perfume from the city, shoes that looked like they belonged in magazines. Natasha got used to it fast. Too fast. She didn't like chores, didn't like farm work, didn't like anything that made her hands rough. "My skin," she'd complain, holding up her fingers as if they were made of glass. "It's too hard. It's too heavy. It's not for me." And honestly, she didn't have to. Vasily did everything. He worked, earned, built, fixed. Natasha simply enjoyed. For 3 years. 3 years that looked like happiness from the outside. Until one day, Natasha stood in the middle of their kitchen and said something that sounded small, but had the power to destroy a man. "Vasya," she said, "how long are we going to sit here? Everyone's moving forward. Everyone's going to the city, and we're just rotting in this village." Vasily blinked, confused. "What do you mean? I never said I wanted the city. You never said it either." Natasha's eyes sharpened. "Well, I'm saying it now. I'm not going to rot here my whole life, and I hope you're not going to force me to." He stared. "You grew up here. You've lived here all your life. What changed?" "What changed?" Natasha snapped, pacing. "Everything. Theaters, cafes, culture, life. What does running water have to do with anything?" He tried to reason. "We live well. I'll run water into the house. We'll have everything. It'll feel like a city apartment." Natasha turned as if he'd insulted her. "God, you're impossible." They fought. And Vasily, usually calm, usually quiet, finally exploded. He called her names. He left. Later, they made up, like couples do, like people who don't know yet that something has already broken. They never talked about the city again. And then, 3 weeks later, Vasily came home from work and the house was silent. No footsteps, no voice, no scent of perfume in the hallway, just nothing. On the table lay a note, a simple note that cut deeper than any knife. Natasha wrote that she'd met someone who truly understood her, someone she would live with in the city. And she also wrote she had taken the money Vasily had been saving in a small box, because it was compensation. Compensation for the best years she supposedly wasted on him. Vasily read the note twice, then a third time, and then he sat down as if his legs had stopped working. He didn't scream. He didn't throw anything. He just went quiet. Because sometimes, when pain is too big, the body doesn't know how to react. The year of vodka. That day changed him. At first, he sold the livestock, one by one. Then he stopped fixing the house. The yard turned messy. The windows stopped getting cleaned. People didn't notice immediately, but villagers always notice eventually. Whispers started. He drinks. He's broken. He still went to work, but he started smelling like alcohol. His supervisor warned him. Vasily didn't argue. That night, instead of half a liter, he bought 2. He tried cleaning a few times. The first time, he found Natasha's hair clip. The second time, he found their wedding album. Photos of a smiling woman who looked like she'd never leave. He dropped the rag and never finished cleaning again. Because how do you clean a house when what you're really trying to clean is your memory? One early winter morning, Vasily stepped outside and instantly regretted it. The cold hit like a punch, the kind of frost that makes your nose sting and your lungs burn. He hunched his shoulders and headed toward the tractor garage. The garage was always freezing because the watchman never heated it properly. Vasily had argued about it before. Then he heard a voice. "Excuse me!" He froze. It was still dark outside. No one should have been in his yard. He turned sharply. A woman stood near the gate, or maybe a girl. He couldn't tell in the dim light. Behind her, a small child clung to her coat, trembling. Vasily's stomach tightened. God, what are you doing out here in this cold? With a child? The woman shrugged in a helpless way. It just happened. Please, could you tell me if there's somewhere we could stay, just for a little while? My little boy is exhausted. We don't have money. Vasily tried to see her face. She looked young, but poverty can make young people look older, and the dark didn't help. He knew his village. People here didn't invite strangers in. Most would call the police before offering a bed. Vasily glanced at the boy. The child couldn't have been older than 5. Small shoulders, pale face, eyes heavy with cold. Vasily checked his watch. If he was late, everyone would assume he'd been drinking. He stood there for a second, trapped between logic and conscience. Then, without thinking too much, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his house keys, and pressed them into the woman's hand. "Take these," he said. "Go to my house. I'll be back after 6. It's warm. If you get cold, you can heat the stove. There should be food, I think. The place is messy. Don't go outside too much. People will ask questions. I have to run." And he ran. Not once did it cross his mind that strangers could steal from him. Maybe because he didn't care anymore. Or maybe because somewhere deep inside him, a part of him still believed in people. The day went fast, but by evening, a strange nervousness started crawling into his chest. He almost went to the store out of habit, almost bought vodka automatically. He still bought it, but he also bought candy. He wasn't sure why. Maybe because of the child. Maybe because some small part of him hoped the strangers were still there. When he approached his house, he stopped. There was light in the windows. That almost never happened anymore. He felt embarrassed, like someone had walked into his soul and turned on the lights. He stepped closer, осторожно, and peeked through the window. His face changed. Inside was order. Perfect order. Everything clean, everything straight. On the sofa, under a blanket, sat a young woman and the little boy. They were reading a children's book. Vasily's throat tightened. He recognized those books. Years ago, when he still believed Natasha would give him a child, he had bought every children's book he could find in the village store. After she left, they just lay in stacks by the sofa, covered in dust. He'd wanted to throw them away, but he couldn't. Now the boy was reading one. And the house smelled like food. Warm food. The kind of smell Vasily hadn't felt in a year. He swallowed. Then he looked down at the vodka bottle in his hand and quickly hid it behind his coat, like a man caught doing something shameful. A dinner that felt like home. The woman jumped up when he entered. She blushed instantly. nervous. "Hi, hello, I'm sorry. We did a little cleaning, and I made dinner." Vasily stood in the doorway, stunned. He had expected a homeless woman, not this. She was gentle-looking, pretty, soft features, a tired kindness in her eyes. I wouldn't say no to dinner," he muttered. "I'm starving." The boy looked up. Vasily walked to him and held out his hand. "I'm Vasily." The child smiled shyly and offered a small hand. "Ivan," the boy said softly. Vasily pulled out the candy. "Here, kids like sweets." Ivan looked at the woman first, asking permission without words. The woman gave the smallest nod. Only then did Ivan take it. Something about that small gesture, how the boy trusted her, how she protected him, hit Vasily harder than he expected. He sat at the table. A bowl of borscht steamed in front of him. He inhaled and actually closed his eyes. When you've lived on pain and vodka long enough, simple food becomes a miracle. He ate. Fast at first, then slower, like he didn't want the moment to end. When the bowl was empty, he looked up and realized the woman had been watching him quietly, waiting for his reaction. "That was—" He cleared his throat, almost embarrassed by emotion. "Unreal. It was so good." She smiled gently. "Thank you." A silence followed. Then the woman hesitated. "We should probably leave soon," she said softly. "We've already taken too much from you." Vasily frowned. "Leave? Where are you going?" She looked down. "We don't have anywhere." That night, after the boy was asleep, she sat with Vasily at the table, holding a cup of tea in both hands, like it was the only warm thing in her world. "My name is Anastasia," she said. "Nastya." And then, finally, she told him the truth. Nastya's story. "Please don't think we're homeless people," she said quickly. "It's not like that. Things just went wrong." She told him she had once gone away to study and made a terrible mistake trusting a man. "I don't regret my son," she said, voice firm. "Never. Ivan is my life. But after everything happened, I had to come back to the village, to my mother." Her mother had married a younger man, a man who smiled politely at first, a man who pretended to be a good stepfather. When Ivan was born, things seemed stable, at least from the outside. But Nastya couldn't get a job. Her mother piled all the housework on her shoulders. Nastya had no money, no independence. Her stepfather provided food and necessities, and Nastya thought, maybe this is just life. Maybe I'll survive like this. Then the stepfather changed. Or maybe he simply stopped hiding who he was. One day he made it clear. Her mother was too old. But Nastya was perfect. Nastya's stomach turned as she spoke. "I told him no," she said. "Immediately. I told him to never speak to me like that again." She stopped, swallowing hard. "But my mother somehow found out." Nastya's eyes filled with tears. and she decided it was my fault. She whispered, "She believed him. Or maybe she wanted to believe him." Her mother accused her of seducing him, of flirting, of destroying her marriage. Then Nastya said the words that made Vasily's hands tighten around his teacup. They decided they needed Ivan, but not me. Her mother and the stepfather planned to keep the boy and throw Nastya out. "She said she could take my parental rights easily," Nastya whispered. "I have no job, no money, no proof. She said she'd tell everyone I'm unstable, that I'm unfit." Nastya looked up at Vasily with trembling lips. "So I ran. And I know they'll look for us," she said. "My mother won't stop." Vasily stared at the table for a long time. Then he slowly nodded, as if deciding something in his soul. "Nastya," he said finally, "you stay here. Both of you. For now." Nastya inhaled sharply. "You don't understand." "I do," he said. "I'm barely home anyway. You won't be in the way. And I'll figure out what to do." For the first time in a year, Vasily said something that wasn't poisoned by bitterness. Something that sounded like a plan. 1 week that changed everything. In 1 week, Vasily almost forgot he used to drink every night, because suddenly he had a reason to come home. He came home to warmth, to a clean house, to the sound of a child laughing softly at a book, to the smell of real dinners. He fixed small things with Ivan, simple projects, little wooden pieces, tiny repairs, and Ivan watched him like he was a superhero. Sometimes they read together. And Nastya brought life into the house like light returning after a long winter. This was the life Vasily had always dreamed about, the life he thought he'd had with Natasha, the life he thought he'd lost forever. And every time Vasily felt that happiness, one thought stabbed him. It isn't mine. Not really. Because Nastya wasn't his wife, and Ivan wasn't his son, and happiness, real happiness, always feels temporary when you don't believe you deserve it. Vasily didn't realize how much he'd changed until the village noticed it first. A week earlier, he had been a man who walked like his body was heavy, like every step reminded him of what he'd lost. Now he moved differently. He came home without stopping at the store for vodka. He worked and actually looked forward to evening. His house smelled like food again, like warmth, like something alive. And that scared him. Because life has a cruel way of taking back anything that feels too good. One evening, Vasily was walking home faster than usual. The sky was already turning dark, the kind of winter dusk that makes everything feel quiet and sharp. He heard a voice behind him. "Hey, Vasya!" He turned. It was the neighbor woman, one of those village women who always knows everything before it becomes official. She smiled, almost teasing. "Well, can I congratulate you?" Vasily's stomach dropped. "Congratulate me for what?" he asked, already afraid of the answer. The neighbor raised her eyebrows. "Your Natasha came back. Been at your place for almost 2 hours." For a second, Vasily didn't breathe. Natasha. Back. His blood went cold. Nastya. Ivan. He didn't even say goodbye. He turned and ran, not walked, ran. He burst through the door so hard it slammed against the wall. There she was. Natasha sat on the sofa in a perfect pose, like she was in a photo shoot. Hair styled, coat expensive, face painted carefully. She looked at him with a wounded expression, as if she was the one who had been betrayed. Vasily's eyes searched the room. The blanket was folded neatly. The children's books were stacked. The kitchen was quiet. No little footsteps. No shy boy hiding behind his mother's legs. No Nastya. No Ivan. "Where are they?" Vasily demanded. Natasha blinked, offended. "Hello to you too. Aren't you happy to see your wife?" Vasily crossed the room in 2 steps, grabbed her by the arm, and yanked her up off the sofa. "I asked you, where are they?" Natasha let out a sharp cry. "What are you doing? Let go!" "Where are they?" Her eyes widened. She wasn't used to him like this. "From where would I know?" she snapped, voice shaking now. "They left. Somewhere. Probably went back to their own place." Vasily's grip loosened, but his face was rigid. He stared at her like she was a stranger. Then he spoke quietly, dangerously quiet. "When I come back, I don't want to smell your perfume in this house." Natasha's lips parted. "Vasya." "When I come back," he repeated, "you're gone." Natasha looked at him, shocked. She had pictured something else. She had pictured him begging, crying, forgiving, falling back into her arms like a loyal dog, because that's what he used to be. But the man standing in front of her now didn't look broken. He looked awake. The search. Vasily ran back outside. Time had already slipped away. If Natasha had been in his house for 2 hours, then Nastya and Ivan had already been gone for 2 hours. In winter, 2 hours could mean death. The cold was brutal. The roads were dark. He tried to think like a mechanic, like a farmer, like a man who knew every path in this village. Where would she go? She had nowhere to go. She would avoid houses because people asked questions. She would avoid the main road because she was afraid. And Nastya was the kind of woman who would sacrifice herself before risking her child. That meant only one thing. She would try to walk out of the village, into the open, into the freezing fields. Vasily's throat tightened. He knew exactly what that could lead to. He sprinted towards the garage area, towards the machines, toward the only chance he had to find them fast. Without questions. His supervisor was there, a man everyone called Sergeyevich. Tough, practical, not sentimental. But he listened to Vasily's rushed, broken explanation without interrupting. Then he nodded. "Take my jeep," he said, tossing Vasily the keys. "It'll handle better than your tractor. And it's faster." Vasily stared at him. "You'd let me—" "Go!" Sergeyevich barked. "Now!" Vasily swallowed hard. "Thank you. I'll bring them back." Sergeyevich's face softened for a split second. "I will do anything," Vasily promised, voice raw, "to return the person who brought me back to life." Sergeyevich nodded once. "Then drive." The headlights cut through the darkness like knives. Vasily scanned the roadside, the fields, the line of trees. Minutes felt like hours. Then he saw movement, a shape. A woman in a dark coat bent forward, clutching a small figure. Vasily slammed the brakes. The jeep skidded, snow sprayed. He jumped out and ran.
Nastya!
She turned like she was seeing a ghost. Her face was white, tears frozen on her cheeks. Ivan's little arms were wrapped around her, trembling.
What are you doing?
Vasily grabbed her shoulders.
What are you doing out here? You're not thinking about yourself. And what about Ivan?
Nastya tried to speak, but she broke down. She collapsed into his chest, sobbing so hard her whole body shook.
She said,
Nastya choked out.
She said she was your wife. That you love her. That you just took us in because you felt sorry.
Vasily's jaw clenched. Nastya's voice cracked.
She said people like me, like us, don't have the right to live in someone else's house. She said I'm trash. That I'm nothing.
She sobbed again, and for a moment Vasily could only hold her, because he understood now. Natasha didn't just return. She returned to reclaim ownership. Not of him, of his suffering. She couldn't stand seeing him happy without her. Vasily's hands trembled with anger, but he forced himself to breathe, because right now anger didn't matter. Only one thing mattered. They were alive. They were safe, and he wasn't letting them go. When Nastya's sobbing quieted, Vasily pulled back and looked her in the eyes.
Tomorrow,
he said firmly,
we file papers. Officially. I'm going to protect you.
Nastya stared at him.
You don't have to.
I do, he said.
Because you didn't just come into my house. You brought it back to life.
Nastya's lips shook. She didn't argue. She just stepped closer and held his coat like she was holding on to the only solid thing left in the world. Ivan sniffed, wiped his nose with his sleeve, then looked up at Vasily with wide eyes.
So,
the boy asked carefully,
does that mean you'll be my dad?
The question hit Vasily like a punch. He froze. A man can handle hard work, cold winters, loneliness, but a child offering you his trust, that's heavier than anything. Vasily's eyes burned. He dropped to one knee so he was level with Ivan. He didn't promise the boy a fairy tale. He promised him something real.
If you want me to be,
Vasily said quietly, I'll be there. Ivan stared for a second, like he didn't believe it. Then he wrapped his little arms around Vasily's neck, and Nastya, still crying, wrapped her arms around both of them. For the first time in years, Vasily felt something settle in his chest. Not pain, not bitterness. A home. The divorce and the wedding. Natasha didn't take it well. When Vasily filed for divorce, she screamed, insulted, threatened. Then she realized something. This wasn't the same man she had left behind. He didn't beg, he didn't collapse, he didn't chase her. He let her go. And that was the only thing that truly frightened her. The divorce was messy, village gossip always is, but it happened. And when the papers were finally signed, Vasily and Nastya did something simple. No big celebration, no fancy restaurant. Just two adults who had survived enough pain to finally recognize love when it arrived. They registered their marriage quietly. And that night, in their house, Ivan fell asleep smiling, because for the first time in his short life, he felt like he belonged somewhere. A few days later, the past came knocking again. There was a loud pounding on the door. Vasily opened it and saw two people standing there like they owned the world. A woman with sharp eyes and hard lips, and a man, too young, too smug, too confident. Nastya froze behind Vasily. Ivan immediately pressed into her side, instinctively protecting himself. The woman didn't even greet them politely. "Well, hello," she said coldly. "Ivan, get dressed. We're going home." Ivan didn't move. Nastya's face drained of colour. The woman's gaze slid to Nastya like she was garbage. "And you," she sneered, "I hope someone finally puts you where you belong." Vasily stepped forward, blocking them fully. "Who are you?" he said, voice low. "To walk into my house without permission and speak like that?" The woman's eyes flicked over him with disdain. "We're his family," she snapped. "His grandmother, his real home." Then she leaned in, spitting words like poison. "This one," she pointed at Nastya, "is unstable. She lies. She seduces men. Don't believe her." Vasily's expression didn't change, but the air around him did. He lifted one hand slowly. "Say one more word," he said quietly. Silence. The young man behind the woman shifted, suddenly uncertain. He looked at Vasily's face and saw something he didn't expect. Not fear, not negotiation. A line, a boundary. A man who had already lost everything once, and wasn't afraid of losing anything again if it meant protecting his family. The young man swallowed. Then, without warning, he turned and walked away. The door slammed outside. The woman jerked, shocked. For a moment, she looked like she might chase him. And she did. She spun and stormed after him, shouting. Their voices faded into the cold. The house fell silent again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This silence was safe. Nastya exhaled shakily. Ivan looked up at Vasily. And Vasily realized something. All his life, he'd been working to build a house. But now, for the first time, he had built something better. A family.